But I genuinely think, and this is, and this is why I wanted to kind of talk to you and talk a bit about this, because those, I mean, idents are a great example of audio branding. Uh,
Mm.
but I think that it is an area that we talk about brands. It's about being identifiable. It's about creating these kind of like, I guess, like distinctive assets.
Mm.
Um, and we, as a kind of a brand industry, we primarily do that visually. That's how it's worked. That's how corporate identities worked before, for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
um but I think that now that we're in a very kind of, for a lot of sectors, it's very digital first, like how people will experience it. The idea of that sound can can have an element of can do part of that job of identification, and
Yeah,
and can also do part of that job of, like you're talking about, part of it was identification, so the kind of commonalities, but part of it was about tone. So it was like, can I get across a kind of an emotion, to so that people know, oh, this is the next program is going to be a bit darker, or
yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean, that kind of, that tonality. And I think that audio, that there's a I think that there's a laziness sometimes where people just lay music on top, and
Yeah.
it's just laid on top, and it's not a
There's just no
part.
connection.
Yeah, and there's no connection. But I think that what you did with the BBC Two stuff, I think it felt like a whole, like a kind of a
Okay.
creative whole, like a sound and visual, which I think is why testament to why it works so well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like what you say with sound, and I guess because you can't see it, you can't. There's nothing tangible in front of you. I think people really struggle, like on the whole, like not just in branding, but in my work in theatre and in everything. Like people don't really understand it. It's sort of like the dark art because you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't sort of, it's just sort of there and it's being scribbled. And I think when sound is working at its absolute best, you don't even notice it's there.
And I think, and that is a really interesting point for, in terms of brand, because a lot of what we talk about with brand is that we're trying to convey meaning,
Mm,
and we're trying to convey, often we talk about, we're trying to convey the personality of a brand. And when you convey the personality, it's the stuff that's really effective is the stuff that people don't, it's implicit.
yeah,
It's not like, um it's not overt. It's not like we're trying to be this, but they get the sense of what you're trying to come across as a brand. And I think that you're right, that the visual um, has a lot of kind of plus points, but I think that what it also has is that the public are very aware of it, whereas it's that kind of, I don't know, maybe more subconscious
yeah.
element of sound, that people know that certain sounds make them feel a certain way, or that they kind of know it's implied, but it's not overt. And that it has, I think, sound, in terms of brand, there's a huge opportunity to start to tap into that in a much more, I guess, considered way, more intelligent
Absolutely,
way, I guess.
absolutely. I completely agree. It's it's sort of doing it without even noticing. Like there's, I guess, how many of us watch Netflix every day but haven't even thought about the little da-dung, at the beginning? And I guess, but it's if just one person, if you hear that out of context, if you hear it somewhere else, you think, oh, it's that. You know exactly what it is, but no one has ever thought this is the sound of the Netflix. Like, and that's sort of like almost this generation's, like the really famous one I remember growing up was like the Intel in a Intel inside kind of branding. And it's, I guess, people think that that's what an audio branding is. Oh, it's just some notes that will be like this. And I guess to a certain extent, that can be it. But actually, there's so much more that can be just almost connecting an environment, connecting sound design, connecting not just music, but connecting all kinds of sound and texture with a brand.
I think that one thing that you said earlier, that thinking about it as more of a textural thing, I think is really key, which is that, and you're right, I think that what people think when they think about audio and brand, they think jingle.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
or they think like the Intel or the whatever, which is fine, because that's kind of like, okay, well, maybe that's the audio equivalent of a logo, right? Let's say that. But visually, there's much more to a brand than a logo. We know that. So I think that you could, in the sense that you have a range of visual elements that come together and that you can play with and that convey a personality. I think the same can be done in terms of audio, that you create maybe it's a suite of sounds, or it's a suite of kind of whatever that you're trying to encourage a certain mood or a certain, and it is done a little, and it's done in other senses as well. So you go into shops and they will smell a certain way, and it's not by accident that they smell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's to, you go, that old thing of going around to buy a house and they're like, oh, just have the smell of like freshly baked bread and all that sort of stuff. It's I think that there's a huge opportunity for businesses to think about their brand as a sensorial, is that a word? I don't know.
Absolutely.
But as a multi-sensorial experience, not just what does it look like.
Absolutely.
Which I think is and I think that the idea of and I think that what the BBC Two idents captured was something around that idea.
Oh, that's great.